The first reading is from Mark chapter 4. Jesus said, "The kingdom of God is as if someone would scatter seed on the ground and would sleep and rise night and day, and the seed would sprout and grow. He does not know how. The earth produces of itself first the stalk, then the head, then the full grain in the head. But when the grain is ripe, at once he goes in with his sickle, because the harvest has come." Now there is a reading from Mark, verses 26 to 29, a litany on love. "Beloved, let us love one another, for love is from God." Then you read, everyone.
That's right. We need everybody else.
Everyone help. Everyone, can you read the next line? Okay. "Beloved, let us love one another, for love is from God. Everyone who loves is born of God and knows God. The unloving do not know God, for God is love. In this was the love of God made known among us, that God sent his only Son into the world that we might live through him. For God loved the world so much that he gave his only Son, that all who have faith in him may not die, but have eternal life. If God thus loved us, we ought also to love one another. We love because he first loved us. If we love one another, God himself dwells in us. His love is perfected in us. There is no fear in love. Perfect love casts out fear. Love bears everything, believes everything, hopes everything, endures everything. For I am persuaded that neither death nor life, nor things present, nor things to come, nor anything else in all creation will be able to separate us from the love of God in Christ Jesus our Lord."
In the children's room upstairs, there's a storybook about a toad who plants himself a garden. And he puts the seed in the ground very carefully and pats the earth down and gives it some water, and then he goes and has his supper and goes to bed. And in the morning when he comes out, he is most dismayed that there are no flowers there yet. So he digs the seed up to see what's going on. And day after day, it's the same thing. Gets up in the morning, still no flowers. So every day he has to dig up that seed to see whether it's growing. It has a happy ending. I leave that to you. He should have taken a lesson from the farmer in that parable of Jesus that Marilyn read for us, who plants his seed and then pretty much does nothing. And all the while he's just going to bed, getting up, living his life, all the time the really important work is happening underground. And the seed sprouts, green shoots appear, and then the ear, and then the full grain, and voila, harvest. This is possibly the simplest story Jesus ever told. It puts us in our place. Our work matters, but we operate in the context of overwhelming grace. We take the little seeds we've got and we plant them, and God makes amazing things happen. What I hear it saying to a busy church is, lighten up. We've seen our way now through 6 hard-working months this year. Our committees meet with big, long agendas. Some weeks the announcements on a Sunday are longer than the sermon. I think we probably need to watch that, but that's for another day. I love the energy of it, and it feels great to have so many people here involved in so many different creative ventures. But today, just recognize that the growth that matters most is a gift, not an accomplishment. Life unfolds on its own, rooted in God. And love is the surest sign of all that the Spirit of God has been busy with us, looking around at the men's and women's breakfasts, riding the wave of the glorious music that we enjoy in Sunday worship, setting up camp in the Bible study meeting on a Thursday night, or the book group on a Sunday morning, or the mindfulness on a Tuesday evening, showing up in your most flamboyant party dress for the choir benefit dinner, running in shivers up our spines in worship, bubbling up in the energy of the children, shimmering in our laughter over coffee, gently enabling us to cry, flaring up into fire sometimes as we share our concerns in prayer time together, feeding something deep in us through the bread and wine of communion. Love is the surest sign that the Spirit has been here. Love that receives newcomers so that they feel at home. Love that speaks out into the community through Facebook or the new website or the reader board. Love that visits the sick and assures the troubled that they're not alone. Love that goes along in the truck with those thousands of pairs of socks we send to the homeless and the Christmas toys to foster kids. Love that nourishes somebody through the dinners we take to Sophia Way, or the cereal we bring for the long line of hungry people that share breakfast. Without that love, we're just another jolly social club or a hyperactive bunch of do-gooders. With it, we are the hands and feet and heart of God. We are the very body of Christ. And that difference means everything. It's the difference between bothering with this place or not. But it's not our doing. We can open ourselves to it, but we cannot control it. Love is a gift. It's a fruit that grows in us by the work of the Spirit among us. Lucky for us, it's the gift that God most wants to give, wherever there's the slightest opportunity for it, like life itself in that farmer's field. So the purpose of the sermon this morning is just to invite you to recognize that, to recognize the love that's here, the fruit that is the Spirit's living presence among us. There will be no shoulds in this sermon. In fact, there will be no shoulds the whole of this summer. We are in a should-free zone. Remember that farmer. Remember his ease of mind, his trust. From time to time, it's good. We just stop and be grateful. Which is not to say that everything's perfect here, that there isn't work to do, or that the love reaches everybody in the way they need. I know that it doesn't. Last week, I asked you to reconsider the list of the fruits of Spirit in the Bible as it was listed there, and what you thought was missing, and alongside love, you added inclusiveness, you added compassion, you added the kind of acceptance that makes space for the otherness in other people. Very perceptive. Those words belong there. We don't always check all those boxes. We are a work in progress. But we know what we're looking for. We know love when we see it. And the purpose of this sermon and the ones to follow this summer is to invite you to see it. Look first at Jesus. See him moving through the countryside. See people flocking to him. He asks, "What do you want me to do for you?" And as often as not, people reply, "I want you please to heal me." So he does, one by one, whatever their need, whether it be physical or psychological or emotional or spiritual. One by one, he gives them their lives back again as love itself ministering to them. One of my favorite writers muses on this picture. Perhaps this momentary suspension of the laws of the universe, that is, all those miracles of healing, can happen because the maker of all things is now no longer outside them, impartially sustaining them, holding everything but touching nothing in particular. Now, instead, the maker is within as well, and he has hands that can reach. He has a local address in space and time from which to act. The church has a local address, and it has time to be open for business. We've said that the Spirit grows love here. Let's look for it. Now, I know that I speak from a position of extreme privilege. Ministers soak up more than their share of love in the church. And I can give you an absolutely outrageous example. I was ordained at age 27 in the church I had attended since age 5. The minister who presided was a guy named Chuck Bezdek, and he had been our pastor my whole life. When he preached the charge to me at my ordination, he took a copy of the bulletin and he held it up for people. I had designed the bulletin. I plagiarized. I took one of those line drawings from the Good News Bible, the one that, like that, put it on the cover. But it was all just black and white. My mom and I were looking at it. We were thinking it's a bit stark. So a couple of days before the ordination, we went down to the church and we got out all the felt pens. And we didn't color in that picture, but we put color around the lines, and it really cheered him up. They were fantastic, actually. So Bezdek takes this bulletin and he holds it up and he said, I came by the church on Friday and I saw Roberta and her mom sitting at a table in the Sunday school area coloring. And it reminded me that Roberta began her career in this church coloring. Huge laughter, right? Everybody roaring around. And the choir then sang an anthem that I had chosen. And when the moment came, Bezdek invited that whole packed church, everybody who was there, to take their hand and put it on the shoulder of the person in front of them, and that one on the shoulder of the person in front of them. So we made a great web. We were all tied together, everybody in the whole church, and up to the circle of people who were around me, who had hands on me. And they channeled a zillion volts of love into my life, like a huge blessing for the work that I was going out to do. The warmth of that, actually, the heat of it was so powerful that I could still feel it now. One of the women in the church presented me with this stole that I'm wearing today. She had woven it herself for me. And then a couple of days later, there was a knock at our door at home, and Mr. Harold was there. Mr. Harold was my junior high Sunday school teacher and continued as a kind of mentor for me and my friends through high school. He gave me a check for $2,000, which was more money than I had ever held in my hand before. He said it was to enable something to happen in one of my churches that would not otherwise be able to happen. I held on to it for ages because it had to be something really special to me, and ultimately spent it to host a conference. It was a beautiful thing for me. Now that is not normal church experience. I know that. I know because of how the ways that I have experienced church. My last church in London, I was not the pastor. My ministry was in an office downtown. So I would just slip into a seat, just kind of without where else is sitting. I would slip into my seat. It was once a month or so that I managed to get there. And I knew the person who sat in front, and I knew the person who sat over here. But that was about it, and nobody else was terribly interested in me until the day that they invited me to preach when the pastor was away. And after that, everybody was my friend, and everybody knew me, and everybody wanted to talk to me. I moved from the outside of the circle to the inside, so I know that the circle is real, that it has an outside and an inside, and that people experience it in all different ways. Church is like that. And if we were to tell our stories here, some of them would be painful. Churches can really let people down, even damage them. We come for love, and if we're met with judgment or criticism, or rejection, or dysfunction, or abuse, or even just neglect. Somehow the mismatch between what we expected and what we got makes it more painful than it would be in a different kind of organization. That's true. It happens. The wounds go deep. But I think the failure of love in the church is just as often about our difficulty in receiving it. We shy away from letting people care. As a card-carrying introvert, I understand that. How you don't want to bother anybody, how you don't want to be the center of attention, you don't want any fuss. Maybe you don't want to let other people into your personal life, all of which is completely your choice. Or maybe you're just busy and you don't want to get too involved, because give a church an inch of your life and it will run a mile. That, again, is just a fact. You have to fight the church off sometimes. But real love isn't possible if we come in without bringing our souls. There is no real love without vulnerability. Vulnerability, incidentally, is another word that you added to that list. It's another sign of the Holy Spirit in somebody's life, their ability to be vulnerable appropriately. And for some of us, that's a tall order. Just recognize that maybe there's a lot love has wanted to do around here that we haven't been willing to allow. I have no doubt that the kind of love I've experienced from churches in my life is available to lots more people. And some of you have shared testimony of that as well, how powerful it's been for you. And you let us know of something that you needed and gave us the chance to respond. So today, recognize that and say thanks. Frederick Buechner writes, of all powers, love is the most powerful and the most powerless. It's the most powerful because it alone can conquer that final and most impregnable stronghold that is the human heart. It is the most powerless because it can do nothing except by consent. Those of you who were in the book group a little while back will remember an extraordinary story about a woman who stood up in her church and told them that she was on the brink of eviction because she couldn't afford to pay her mortgage. Was it illness? I can't remember the background to that story. And one of the other church members got up right after her and said, I'll cover the mortgage this month. The next month somebody else stepped in, and the next month somebody else, until the woman got herself back on her feet. That story blew me away. Would any of us here have had the courage to get up and ask? And if not, can we say that we have the slightest idea of what love could do here if we were brave enough to risk finding out? No shoulds. I'm in danger of sort of tiptoeing in that direction. No shoulds. Just an invitation. Within us and among us, the Spirit brings forth the fruit that we recognize as love. We have a role in it, but it isn't to dig up the seed every 5 minutes and check our progress and try harder, try harder, try harder. It's simply to share what we have. The more that we give, the more we find we've got. That's how it works with the Spirit. For the plowing, sowing, reaping, silent growth while we are sleeping, future needs in love's safekeeping. Thanks be to God. Amen. We give love its hands and feet and voice through our offering. We will receive that now.
It exists to give you comfort. It is